Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. Well, for this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at a really fun, up-tempo, rockabilly style guitar composition. This is so much fun to play. It's like incredibly addictive. And a lot of this is going to be rhythm-based. So we're going to be looking at different chord voicings and how you can use these chord voicings in other things. So don't just think of it as a rockabilly thing that you can only play over rockabilly style. These chord voicings work really well over blues or country or lots of different styles. So I'm going to break this lesson down over the course of 2 videos. In this video, we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to learn the second half, or watch the second video rather, and get the tablature and get the MP3 jam tracks so that you can practice playing them, I have them in 2 tempos. You can get those by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP301. Alright, so those of you that follow my lessons know that I don't typically play things that are really fast like this. I'm not that fast of a player myself, so this is kind of pushing my comfort zone. But when it comes to playing a real drive-in rockabilly like this, it just doesn't sound as good if you play it slowly. But when you play it fast like this, it's got that real drive-in rhythm that makes people want to get up and dance and all of that stuff. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, is this driving rhythm. We're going to learn how to play that, and you'll see that it's not as difficult as you might think. And then we're going to learn how to play chords and different voicings all over the neck. And this is like the coolest part of this lesson to me, is because you'll be able to use these chords in other things. There's a lot we're going to be covering in this lesson, so bear with me here. All right, let's talk about the structure of the song then. The song is played in the key of E. And one thing I should mention regarding the speed of the song, I do have multiple versions of the jam track, which I mentioned in the intro. And if you're just starting this out, as we learn this stuff, you might want to start with a slower jam track and just focus on your coordination between your left and your right hand. Then you can work towards the faster one, which is set at 106 beats a minute. So let that be your end goal, but maybe don't start there. This depends on your comfort level. All right, so the song is played in the key of E. These are basic chords. It's an E chord, a B chord, and an A chord. We're just going to be playing variations on those chords, like an E9 and E6 and so forth. But that's the structure. It's like a 1-5-4 structure. So we go from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. Typical in rockabilly, happens quite a bit, and then to the 4 chord and so on. But we're going to start off with the 1 chord, and it's just an E chord, which we all know how to play down to first position. But I want you to pay attention to the rhythm. Let me just demonstrate it here. Now that should sound familiar to some of you, depending on your age maybe, or your taste in music, but it's got a little bit of Teddy Bear by Elvis Presley. If you listen to the... And if you're not familiar with that song, go check it out. But if you'll listen to what the backup vocals are doing, the Jordanaires, which backed up Elvis, they're playing that, they're singing that kind of a melody behind him. And then the rhythm section in his band is doing that as well. It also reminds me of the song called Holiday Road by Lindsey Buckingham, which is one of my favorite songs when I was a kid in the 80s. It's just a really cool groove. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head. And I think that just sort of, when I analyzed it though, I realized that maybe Lindsey got the rhythm from Elvis. Who knows? But that's what we're going to start with. Now look at the right hand, just the right hand, not the left hand. Now that's going to happen throughout the entire thing. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It's got a swagger to it though. You're not playing it straight on the beat. It's not like this. And that's called a shuffle. And so that's the right hand shuffle is what gives it, that's kind of the secret sauce really to the whole thing, is getting the groove going like that. All right, so follow along with me. We're going to start off by playing an E chord with the left hand, and then with the right hand, we're going to play up, up, down, up. Hear it again. So it's up, up, down, up. Now what you want to do though, you don't want to start with the upstroke. You actually want to start with a downstroke, which is muted. So you go like that. So when you put it together, it goes like this. So you can see that the right hand stays in motion. It never drops the beat. And as soon as that happens is when the whole thing falls off the rails. And that's what will allow you to play fast. You can see I'm just playing the drums with my right hand. Snare drum. It's actually a kick and a snare if you think of it. But that's what's going on there. So if you were to count this, it'd be 1 and. So come comes in on the and of one, one and two, and there's the other one. So the and of one and the and of two, one and two and three and two and three and. Okay, so that's the first part. And I play through that 3 times. Then I came up and just accented that. Now what did I do there? I played another E chord. I'm just playing it in a different voicing. And this is why that whole caged system, which is always talked about, is so important. Because it's just playing chords in different spots. It's playing the same chord. So now I'm playing an E chord, but I'm using the D chord shape. So you can see these fingers are making what looks like a D chord, but we're just playing it up here. Now my middle finger and my index finger are on the 4th fret, strings 1 and 3. My ring finger's on the 5th fret, string 2. And then once I play that, or once I make that with my left hand, I play this with the right hand. So it's down, up, down, up, down. Down, up, down. And so when you put the two together, then you have... Pretty cool right there. Even if you learn nothing else, it's as simple as that may sound. It's actually, you're doing quite a bit with that, because you're muting strings, you're creating a rhythm, you're creating a percussive element, and all of that's happening with just some basic chord shapes. So it takes your focus away from your left hand and really makes you focus on what the right hand is doing. You start to see how important the right hand is when it comes to playing this style of music. Okay, so that's what we have. We play through this one 3 times. 3, and then we go back to the E chord, and I play through it twice, and then I came up here and played. Now what is that? Remember I said at the beginning we're going from the 1 to the 5 chord. So all I'm doing is I'm going from the E chord up to the B chord, which would be your 5 chord. So think of your B chord like this, but we're not going to make just the plain old B, because that's just kind of boring. We want that kind of rockabilly, western swing, jazz kind of feel. So what am I playing there? I'm playing a B6 chord. And so the easiest way to think about this chord shape is think about how to play your B chord. So use that as your reference, as your starting point. So you can see you're barring here on the 7th fret. And then where that fret would be, you'd put your index finger. And then these 3 fingers are going to make the D7 chord shape. So think of a D7 down in 1st position. If those fingers were making that same shape, but your pinky was on the 9th fret 2nd string, and the other fingers followed there, with your index finger on the 7th fret 1st string, that would be a B6 chord. Okay, so with the B in the bass, if there's a B in the bass, that's a B6 chord. And so the way that I played the rhythm for that goes like this. Alright, and then I came down 2 frets, took the same shape and slide it down 2 frets, and that's a B9 chord. So we just, by taking the same shape from here to here, we've played a B6 and a B9. That should be a massive light bulb that goes off for a lot of people. Some of you will already know that, but now you've got this chord shape. Don't even think of the word B, just think of the shape. So that you've got this shape. Now I can play a 6th version of that. I know how that connects to the original shape, right? The major bar chord shape. And then if I go down 2 frets, I'm playing a 9 chord version of whatever that first chord was. That works for any chord. That's why it's important to connect everything back to whatever your starting point is. And for me, the starting point is always just your major bar chord, where these 3 fingers make the E chord shape. I always think of that as kind of home base, 101. And then everything from that is just additive. So, that's how I play the rhythm. Let me slow that down. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm starting with a downstroke. Down, up, down, up. So it's kind of alternating. Down, click, click, up, click, click, down, click, click, up. And that'll just take some practice going over that. So you might want to rewind the video there. You've obviously got the tablature if you're a premium member, so you can see where all the muted strums are and everything. All right, so let me back up and I'll play us from the beginning. So we'll go from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. Now after that, we would go from the, so we're on the 5 chord, then the song goes back to the 1 chord. Now I could have just gone back and played the same E chord down here in first position, but to make it interesting, I played this. Now that sounds really fancy and complex. It's not. We're doing the exact same thing that we did over the B chord, but now we're doing it for the E chord. So now I'm playing an E6. I'm just kind of sliding down a fret. So just ignore that part. It's still just considered a B, or I'm sorry, an E6. And then I go down 2 frets, just like we did before, which leads us to the E9. So let me show you how I'm making this E6 chord. So I've got my index finger on the 4th fret, 1st string, middle finger on the 5th fret, 2nd string, ring finger is on the 6th fret, 3rd string. Now some of you are going to go, wait a minute, that's different than what you showed us before, because when we did the B, we were using this chord shape. And you're right, there are different ways you can play the 6 chord and the 9 chord, and this is just another voicing. So this will be a big breakthrough for some of you. I know this blew my mind when I realized it. But the 6 chord, you know, I just showed you how to get to the 6 chord from your basic chord shape, so that's one way to get to it. But all it really is, from a theory perspective, is it's the relative minor of the chord you're on. So the 6th chord is just the relative minor of the chord you're on. So think about that for a minute. Let me demonstrate it. So when we're playing an E chord, for example, what's the relative minor of E? Well, to get to the relative minor, and I've done a whole lesson on this, several lessons in fact. You can go to activemelody.com, do a search for relative minor, and you'll see some more in-depth lessons. But if you take your root note, which there's your E note, and we go down 1, 2, 3 frets, this direction, that will be your relative minor of any note, or any chord rather. So in that case, it's a C sharp. So C sharp minor is the relative minor of E. So if I play a C sharp minor triad, then even though the song's major and it's real happy and jumpy, and the chord is the 1 chord, which is an E, if I play that C sharp minor triad, you hear it with the E in the bass, that is now an E6 chord. It is not a minor chord. It's really weird. It's a weird thing. So that I always get people saying, well, wait a minute, that's not a, you know, when you're playing that minor, that would be a C sharp minor. And you're right, it is, but it depends on the context. And that's probably the biggest takeaway in this entire lesson. So if I were to back up then and summarize all of that, if your head is spinning, just hear me out here. If you want that real cool jazzy 6th sound that you hear in so much music, all you have to do is know whatever chord you're on, you can just play the relative minor of that chord. So in this case, we're playing an E, so I'm playing a C minor chord. And it works really well on top of that. It also means you can play that C minor chord anywhere that you can play a C minor. So I'm not just playing it here. I could play it up here. Hear how that works? And I can play it in all the different minor voicings. And so that's starting to connect it back to caged, and you start to see, oh, okay, so that's how this works. And then to get to the 9 chord, you just go down 2 frets from your 6 chord. So now that should have just opened up a whole bunch of opportunity for you to start to incorporate those really classic chord progressions into your playing. All right, hopefully I didn't belabor that point. Let me back up now and play everything up to this point. And then we go to the 4 chord, which is the A. And so what I'm playing there is the A6 chord. We were just talking about the 6 chord. What is it? How do you make it? And I showed you how to make, from the B chord shape, how to make the B6 chord. Well, there it is over the A. Same thing that we did over the B. And just remember, that triad is the same as an F sharp minor, because that's the relative minor of A. So that's where you get that really cool rockabilly jazzy sound. Okay, so then when we go to the A6 chord, I went, and then I played a diminished chord. So we play the A6, and then that's an E diminished 7, and in both of those, that's not two chords, that's an E diminished 7 just played in two spots. Let me show you how to play it. So what you're going to want to do then is, this is a D7 chord shape. I use this shape all the time. So think of your D7 in first position, slide it up so your pinky is now on the 6th fret first string. Middle finger's on the 5th fret second string, ring finger's on the 6th fret third string. And then you put your index finger down on the 5th fret fourth string. And that is an E diminished 7. Now that's an awesome transition to get you to the next chord. So those diminished chords are something that you can work into your blues. I did a whole lesson on this. I don't want to beat up this point, but just go to the Active Melody website and search diminished. And there was one video, I can't remember, I just remember I was wearing a yellow shirt. I don't know why I remember that. But you can check that one out where I show you how to use this transition chord. And that's what I'm doing here. So it's an E diminished 7. And then if you walk it up 1, 2, 3 frets, it's also an E diminished 7. What's cool about those diminished chords are you can just keep going. It's the same chord. You don't have to change your fingers at all. You just move it up. And it works all over the neck that way. This way or this way. It's very cool. So you hear people, jazz players sometimes doing little runs like that. And that's all they're doing. They're just taking the same chord shape. So I started here and came up to here. And then the song goes back to the 1 chord. So that was our transition to get us back to the 1 chord, which is the E. Instead of playing the E here, which I could have done, I just played it up here. This is using the A chord shape out of Caged. So if you think of your A in first position, or to slide it up to here, that's what I'm doing. And so, I use my pinky. Some people use their ring finger, and you bar the first 4 strings on the 9th fret. Index finger goes down the 7th fret, 5th string, and you play those middle 4 strings, 5, 4, 3, and 2, like that. And so it's the same rhythm now. I'm not going to go over the rhythm again. That just sort of stays throughout. So we have back to your 1 chord, and then to your 5 chord, which is your B7 again, which we've already covered, and then it goes back to the 1 chord. And I have all these options now. I could have played the 1 chord here, I could have played it here, I could have played it here, but I chose to play it up here just to give you another voicing for it. And this is an E9 chord. Now I learned this chord from Hideaway, Freddie King's Hideaway. You know that part that goes... That's the chord that was used for that. This is an awesome chord. And the way that, let me show you how to play it, and then I'll show you how to think about it so you can just grab this chord easily going forward. But I have my pinky on the 12th fret first string. Index finger is on the 9th fret second string. Middle finger is on the 11th fret third string. Ring finger is on the 12th fret fourth string. It seems uncomfortable at first when you first play it, but you'll realize how easy it is to play because your fingers just fall into place for that chord. And so I use that one quite a bit. And the way that I visualize this chord is I think about, there's the old home bass, my E major bar chord, and I look at where the bar is. In this case, it would be on the 12th fret, and I've got my pinky and my ring finger in that fret. So now you could, if I were to quiz you and say play an A9 chord using this chord shape, you should be able to real quickly see the A chord here, and then make the chord shape based off the root fret. So backing up, we have E, still on the E chord, up to the B, B6, down to the B9, and then we go to the E6, down to the E9, then the A6, then we got the E diminished 7, back to the E chord, B6, E9. Right? So then when we come to that second part I played, look at that. That's the A chord. So the chords are A to the E chord, or the 4 to the 1 chord. And all I'm doing is just playing these little vamps around this A chord shape. So I'm thinking of the A chord right here where we bar on the 5th fret. I'm barring the first 3 strings though on the 5th fret, and I'm going to play strings 2 and 3. Doing a hammer on with my middle finger to the 6th fret 3rd string. And then I'm coming up here and barring the first 3 strings on the 7th fret. So you have... So it sounds like that. Now you're going to have to go into the tablature and get the timing for this. I don't really have the time to count it all out. Or you can go into the slow jam track and just listen to how I'm playing it. But that's what I'm doing. And then I come down to the E chord and I start it the same way. Same thing, but just imagine where the nut is here on the guitar. Imagine that being my finger barring just like I did here. So you can see it's doing the same thing. So I'm playing strings 2 and 3 again, and I'm hammering on this time to the 1st fret 3rd string. And then I've got my middle finger barring the first 3 strings on the 2nd fret. And then I went a little variation. So that's sliding up. This just gives it kind of a bluesy feel here. And I'm playing the chord changes here, so I'm staying in the key of E for this one little part. So I've got my middle finger on the 4th fret 3rd string, my index finger on the 3rd fret 2nd string. And I'm actually hitting strings 3, 2, and 1. I'm hitting the open 1 string. And then I come down and bar the first 3 strings again on the 2nd fret. And then back down to the E chord. So backing up from the second part, we have... And then we go into our next part, which is the F sharp major. So we go from this E, we go up 2 frets, which would be our 2 chord, our major 2 chord. Same thing as we did over the A. I'm just going to bar the first 3 strings here on the 2nd fret now. Again, playing strings 2 and 3, barring the first 3 strings on the 4th fret. And then I came up to the F sharp 7 chord. Now that's just using a little triad here from this chord shape up to here. Now remember when I showed you at the beginning of this video how you can go from your E chord here to your E chord here? Do the same thing here. So if that's your F sharp chord, that would be your F sharp chord using the D chord shape. That means if I play the D7 chord shape, that would be the 7 chord of this chord. So that would be your F sharp 7 chord. Hopefully that makes sense. If this is a D chord and that's a D7 chord, then if that's an F sharp chord, that's an F sharp 7 chord, and so forth and so on all over the neck. All right, so let's take it from the beginning of this A part. So we have... And then the turnaround. So it goes to the B chord. Now your B triad, just think your B major bar chord. We're just going to play the top 3 strings out of that bar chord. So that's all you need is just bar the first 2 strings here on the 7th fret and then middle finger on the 8th fret 3rd string. Walk that down 2 frets. Then we're going to bar first 3 strings there on the 4th fret and then walk that down 2 frets down to the 2nd fret. So you have... And that's just walking right down the scale, the major scale. So if you like the sound of that, just remember the patterns that I'm using there. And try that over a C chord, for example. So you could go... Right? So you can use that as a little walk down. And there's so much you can do with it. I could spend a whole lesson on just that transition to walk you back down. But that's what I did. And then I go into the whole second part. The second part's where we get into some really cool songs. All this really cool single string stuff. And there's some more chords thrown in that second part as well. Let me back up then, and I'll play through this first half one more time. I'll play through it a little bit slower, and then I'll see you in part 2 video. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4...